Welcome to Diaries of a Healing Latina. This is a safe space where we talk about the parts of healing that no one really prepares us for. In today's episode, we're going to talk about being the eldest daughter in a Hispanic household. If you're an older daughter, then you know that there's a lot of strict rules, there's a lot of expectations, a lot of you caring for others and putting others first other than yourself. And growing up with that mindset, you don't realize it at the moment, but later on it affects your relationships and even affects your healing journey, something that happened to me. If you're an older daughter, then you know that it's not easy. Growing up as an older daughter, you have a lot more responsibilities, and one of the main priorities, especially if you have siblings, is in case something were to happen to your parents, you start getting prepared to take care of your siblings and to be basically the parent of the household. And that was something that happened to me. Before my siblings were born, I was the only child and I could do whatever I wanted, but there were a lot of strict rules that still applied, and there were a lot of expectations, especially from my father. My father was the strict one. He was the one with a lot of expectations as well, and it wasn't expectations like something bad or horrible. He just obviously wanted the best for me. So his expectations and his strict rules were get good grades, remain active, and basically just be a perfect daughter. But there were moments where I felt that my dad was so strict that I almost felt like I was in a military. I almost felt like I was also a boy in a way, because he treated me in a way that it was like first you, second you, third you, but also never depend on anyone. With that mentality, especially being a woman, later on it affects you in your relationships because you don't allow anyone to truly take care of you. You're more independent and you're more dependent on what you could do for yourself. And that's how I feel like things affected me later on, because in all of my relationships with any man, I wouldn't allow a man to treat me. I wouldn't allow a man to take me out on dates, to buy me basically anything. I was always in my masculine energy. I spoke to men however I wanted to speak to them. I treated them however I wanted to treat them. I had no respect for men whatsoever. There was no sensitive spot for them either. For my ex-boyfriend, there was obviously a sensitive spot. I was a lot more submissive. I was a lot more quiet. Whatever he said, I did. But after him, after my breakup and how all of that shifted, I went back to the mentality that my father had implanted in me ever since I was a child. And like I had mentioned previously, it was first you, second you, third you. Never depend on anyone. Never ask anyone to help you with anything. Always make sure you do everything yourself. Do not owe anyone anything. And sometimes I wish I had not been taught that in a way, because that really guarded me up. One of my biggest hard-headed mindsets is I'm never going to allow a man to tell me what I can and cannot wear. I'm never going to allow a man to tell me what I can and cannot do. And in certain ways that has also affected my relationships in a negative manner. Now, if you're trying to do better for yourself, if you're trying to achieve your goals, if you're trying to work hard for yourself and that man's telling you no, then that's not the man for you, girl. But if, for example, he would tell me, can you please stop going out clubbing so much? I would want you to stay in because I want to see how this goes and whatever. I would be like, no. And if a man were to tell me, please stop going out so much or please stop drinking so much, I would do the complete opposite and I would do it more. Because in my mind, no man's going to tell me what I can and cannot do. Those were the ways that mentality affected my relationships later on. Do I blame my dad? Absolutely not. I actually thank him, because if it weren't for him, I wouldn't have that mentality. Hello. I think that was one of the best mindsets, but also one of the most deteriorating mindsets as well, because I could be very hard-headed in the sense that I will not tolerate really much from people, even though it's a good thing. I'm not going to say people, I'm going to say men. It's a good thing, but it has affected me in certain aspects of my life, and sometimes I look back and I'm like, well, I wish I would have done that differently, or I wish I would have handled that situation differently, because I should have been more in my feminine energy rather than my masculine energy. But I do allow my masculine energy to overpower any sort of feeling, especially when it comes to men. But I did go to therapy and we did heal a lot of those aspects. And I could say now I treat men better and I speak to them better. Am I a lot more emotional with them? I don't know, because I haven't really felt for someone. But I could tell you right now that I'm more emotional with them. I haven't dated in 2 years, so I don't really know. Maybe someone later on comes into my life and my feminine energy comes out, because one thing about me, there's nothing wrong with being submissive with a man if it's the right man. If that man is not the right man, he does not deserve you being in your submissive energy. And I'm saying that in the nicest way possible, because I've been told a lot that sometimes I sound like a man hater. And I could be, but I could also be a very understanding woman when it comes to a good man. That's all I want to say. Growing up, I did grow up more with my father than my mother. I grew up mainly taught by him because I lived mainly with him. And then my summers were spent with my mother, but living with my dad and seeing my dad like hustle and seeing the way that he was and all of that, it also inspired me to be more like him. And I wanted to be like my father ever since I was a child. I knew that ever since I saw him working and have his own companies, I wanted my own thing. That was more of an eye-opener for me. But with all of that, my dad did spoil me a lot, because before my siblings, I was the only child and I got whatever I wanted. I got whatever Barbie I wanted. I got whatever electronics I wanted. I got everything. But with everything that I got, there was always something that I needed to do in exchange. And what I needed to do in exchange was give my father good grades. It was highly expected of me. Since I was raised in Colombia, the grading system was a bit different. And I could say over there, the education is a bit faster than here in the United States. When I was studying over there, I was almost like years ahead than here in the United States. So when we got here to the United States, my father had already pushed me to learn multiplication tables. And coming here to the United States, being in the grade that I was, and seeing that no one really knew much about multiplication, that they were just learning multiplications. I remember I would always get good grades here because I was advanced. And obviously he had pushed me. One of the subjects that I was pretty good at back when I was younger was math. Shocking. Now I'm horrible at it, by the way. I actually need my fingers to count, because your girl cannot do multiplication or additions at the top of her head. Maybe my brain's a little fried by now, but who knows? When we moved here, I used to get a lot of good grades in my math classes. So I would get whatever I wanted. And back then, I remember that was around the era where brats were very in. And all I wanted was everything brats. Back when I was in Colombia, everything I wanted was Barbie. So I got everything Barbie. And then obviously you start getting older, and then I remember like a year or after we moved here, that's when, oh my god, do you guys remember when AT&T used to be Singular? I think it was called Singular. And they had this white little phone. It was like that, a white little phone, and it opened up. And I remember I wanted a phone so bad. And the only way that I could get that phone was if I aced one of my ESOL classes. Do you know how difficult that was? My family always wants to say that my first language was English. No, it was not, baby. My first language was Spanish. Okay? I have it right here. Those ESOL classes for me were super freaking hard. Mind you, my dad was very strict, so I also couldn't really have friends, and my friends were like my family members. That's how strict my dad was. And so I didn't really have friends, and I didn't really socialize with anyone. So me to learn English was very hard. And I remember I decided to start just watching cartoons a lot. And that's how I improved my English. In my ESOL class, I did make one friend, but we would only see each other in school. And it was like a very off friendship because we wouldn't really speak, but we would speak sometimes. Also, I was like an outsider when I was younger. I used to get bullied a lot, so a lot of people didn't want to be my friend or speak to me. And it was very hard for me. Like, not only did I have a language barrier, but also I was an outsider and not a lot of people wanted to be my friend back then. So it was very hard for me to learn English, and I basically forced myself until I finally got that A in my ESO class and my dad got me the phone. And so back then, that's when also texting started rolling out because phones were already out. But that phone was special because you could text. It was like one of those flip phones that you text and the little letters were there, whatever, almost like the flip phone, whatever it was called. So my dad got me that phone, but it had no text and it had no data. And I remember I would be like, what's the point of this phone then? So my phone was only to call, and my calls were very restricted. It was only my parents. That's it. There was absolutely no one else that I would call. So I basically had a phone for nothing. That's a strict parent to you right there. As time progressed, obviously, I started becoming a teenager. And I think my dad learned the hard way that being a strict parent does not really work out for you. Because when you're a strict parent, once your child becomes a teenager, they're going to rebel. That's exactly what I did. I rebelled because my dad was so strict with me that I basically went ballistic. I was like, oh God. Once I turned like 14 years old and I had my gastric bypass, I had lost weight, I went left. I started going out with my friends. I started lying to my parents. I started, drinking. One day I got home drunk. My dad didn't even know what to do with me that day. And he got so mad at me. I got so mad at him, and we started arguing because we used to bump heads a lot when I was a teenager. And I'll never forget, I turned around and I was so mad and I was like, I want to be a slut. I'm gonna be a slut. What possessed me? No idea. Did I do what I said I told my dad I was gonna do? No. My dad was like, go ahead. That's all you. You want to be a slut? Go ahead. That's all you. You're the one that's gonna look bad, not me. And I was just so mad. I remember I went into my room, and when I used to rebel like that and I used to argue with my dad like that, I used to get grounded. And me getting grounded, I would get grounded for almost 2 months, and everything was taken away from me. The radio, the TV, the cell phone. I basically had nothing. All I had was me, my thoughts, and a ceiling for 2 months. And I remember that I would go to school and everyone would talk about like all these updates, all these news, and like, oh, did you see like Britney Spears and Justin Timberlake and this and the MTV and da 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 da. And I'm just there like this. I'm grounded. One day, oh my God, I can't believe I'm saying this story. One day I was so bad. But I was so bad that my dad grounded me. He had given me my dog. His name was Prince. Rest in peace. I loved him to death. My dad took my dog away. Oh my God. And I remember I went to school and my friends were like, Jamie, what do you mean your dad took your dog away? And I was like, yeah, he grounded me and he took my dog away. It was that bad. Like, I was such a rebellious child and I was so bad. But when I say I was so bad, it got to that point that my dad didn't even know what else to do. He's like, if phones are not working, the TV's not working, I'm taking away your dog. The one you love the most. Maybe you could learn. Later on, I ended up finding out back then he had a secretary and my baby was staying with the secretary. That was my lifestyle when I was a teenager. I think my dad obviously learned that being that strict does not work because it makes your child rebel. Because I could definitely say that my sister and my brother definitely, it wasn't as strict. It wasn't a strict program like that anymore. There were expectations, obviously, like good grades, go to school, all of that. But it wasn't as strict as it was with me, because with me, it was almost like you're gonna be a nun and you gotta read and this and that and you gotta study. And I hated studying. I think that made me hate, I hated studying. I would be like, please give me a break. Like, I'm done. Like, I was also a child, you know? And looking back too, like, my dad was young too. He had no idea what the heck he was doing. He was just trying to be a parent. That was his first time being a parent. And he got a literal, like, twin of him. And that was me. I'm literally his twin. Like, his reflection. Emotionally. One day I'll probably sit down and talk about my teenage years, because those were firecrackers. Straight up firecrackers. When my brother was born, I remember I was placed the responsibility of, you always have to take care of your brother. Doesn't matter, like, you always have to take care of your brother. And there were scenarios where my parents would talk about, like, what if we're not here? What are you going to do? Are you going to take over as the parent of your brother? Are you going to, like, be there always for him? And I remember my mindset, like, ever since I was a child, I would be like, yes, like, there's no ifs, no buts. I could say with my brother, I was very, very, very overprotective. I didn't allow a lot of people to get near him. I wouldn't allow, like, we had a few cousins from my dad's side of the family that used to like to fight a lot. And they were a bit of bullies, and they would try to bully my brother. But obviously he had an older sister and I was way older. I think I'm like 6 years older than my brother, or 5 years older than my brother. Whenever I saw those cousins come around, and if I felt that they were going to bully my brother, if I felt that anyone was going to try to bully my brother, I was already ready with my boxing gloves. Like, come on. Like, I fought so many of my cousins. I fought so many other kids. And the thing is that I had my little gang. Okay, it was my cousin and then my uncle, because my uncle was born around the same time as us. So we all grew up together, and we were just like the little gang, okay? And if someone came close to my brother, I was like, what's up? I got into so much trouble when I was a child because of my brother, because I was taking care of my brother. Mind you, my brother was the calmest child on planet Earth. That man was like, if I could explain my brother, it would be like a hibernating bear. That man, all he did was eat, sleep. You rarely saw him running or like playing. All he wanted to do was just sleep and chill. That's him now too, by the way. I mean, he likes to go out now, but he's more on the chill side. Ever since you're a child, especially when you're the oldest daughter, when you're the oldest child, you're already placed with a mentality ever since you're young that if something were to ever happen, you got to take care of your siblings. Like, it doesn't matter. Now, a lot of things did run through my mind back when I was a child. Like, how am I going to take care of my brother? Like, there were moments where I would question that, like, how would I take care of my brother? And I would always be like, well, if something were to happen, like, we have to find a home. Like, but I was always with the mindset that I'm never going to let my brother go. And that's something that I took even until today's day, that I feel extremely overprotective, not only of my brother, but my sister too. I'm saying of my brother because with my brother, we lived in Colombia, so we were around always family and a bunch of people, and it was always like, I always had to watch out. Now, when my sister was around, the same thing happened. The responsibility was mainly placed on me and making sure that I took care of my sister and my brother. And I was always like a hawk when it came to my sister too. Because my sister, I think she only lived in Colombia for her first year. So I wouldn't really allow that many people to come near her or touch her, absolutely anything. I just knew that a lot of our family members, they were bullies, okay? They were bullies, and I was always like on go. Like, whoever I have to take down, I'm taking down. And that was one of the things that I carried on until, like I said, until today's date. I carry that feeling that even though they're my siblings, I see my siblings as my kids. I don't see my siblings as like my brother, my sister. Like, there's moments where I say I love my siblings as if they were my children. Because no matter what, I'm always going to be that overprotective older sister. I'm going to like want to know everything. I always ask questions like, where are you going? Who are you hanging out with? Like, I always want to know. I feel like sometimes I ask more questions than my mom and my dad. I just have that in me, like, I need to know, who are you going to be hanging out with, where you're going, have your phone ready, like, if I call you, you answer. Sometimes I get a little, but it all depends. But when it comes to like my sister, especially now, I feel like now I try to give her more advice than before, because before I was just too into my own world, that now that I'm more involved in my sister's life, I do try to be attentive of everything, of her entire life, her entire perspective, because I did realize that even though I grew up in Colombia and I have more of a mindset of like always looking, like always watching your back, I feel like my sister didn't get that experience. She's more of like chill, cool, collected. The way that I see my sister now is like a baby. Like she still has a baby mindset. Like, there have been moments where, she's noticed certain things, experienced certain things, and she's learning from it, but I feel like at times I've gone through so much in my past, and from going out clubbing and all of that, like seeing that whole entire lifestyle and seeing different types of people, different types of mindset, the way that certain women are, the way that certain men are. I try to educate my sister as much as I can and try to give her as much advice as I can. But I feel like that's a role that I have given myself, that I have to, be there, and I have to be her best friend, because at the end of the day, regardless of anything, we're gonna have each other. Yes, at times I try to be like their friend, but I also know that I'm so overprotective, and I feel like they know that I'm that overprotective, that it's more of like, like I'm coming, like mama bear's coming. Because I could get very, what's up? When it comes to my sister and my brother, it's a no. Hell no. And now we're gonna change up a little bit. You know what's another role that you're also given as an older child? I struggled so much at this job, and it was translating. Girl, I was doing so bad in my ESOL classes that I was like, how am I going to translate? There's people would speak to me and I'd be like, oh my god, like I don't even know how, like what they're saying. They're speaking English way too fast. Sometimes, like, you know how they say in Colombia, el inglés todo chueco? Eso a mí me pasaba. Mi inglés todo chueco. And I would try to speak English so bad back then, and I couldn't. And my mom would be like, oh, but like, what are they saying? I don't understand. And I'll be like, I don't know. Like, you and I are both stuck. You're staring at an ESOL student, like. But being an older daughter, a lot of duties come into being an older daughter. There's a lot of women that I've seen videos where they feel either, obviously they have either really strict parents and they feel like they got that one hit and it was like pretty intense. There's obviously other women that I've seen that they feel like they're probably not heard or seen because they have so many responsibilities that have been placed on them. I wanted to give a bit of my story and my upbringing, being the eldest daughter, how things affected me. In a way, I would say that the main thing that affected me was just my dad being so strict on me, because if my dad would have not been that strict, I feel like I would have not rebelled as much. In my teenage years, I feel like I would have been a lot calmer, but me always wanting to basically fight my dad and bump heads with my dad and argue with my dad, it caused that entire chaos from freaking 14 all the way until I was like 20 years old, I would say. And even after my 20s, there were a couple years that I did struggle, even having a conversation with my parents, with my siblings, because I was still fighting myself. I didn't know where to head, and during my rebellious years, I did drift apart from my family, especially my siblings. And I feel like in a way, during those moments, I do feel like I felt my siblings because I wasn't presently there for them. But I also knew that they were secure. I also knew that they were okay, because they didn't have the upbringing that I had. They didn't have the mindset that I had, and they didn't see the chaos that I saw as as a child. They grew up in a calmer home. They grew up, not calmer, but calmer. I feel like the years that I should have been there for them, I was not there for them. I feel that those were the years that in a way I gave them my back because I was so consumed in my own world, in my relationship, in clubbing, partying, and just this whole world that I was in. And I was so consumed by it that I didn't even have a relationship with my siblings. Later on, obviously, especially after going through tragedies, going through therapy, I realized that I did not have a relationship with my siblings, and I've been working on my relationship with my siblings ever since then. At moments, like I had mentioned previously, I do feel like I felt my siblings at that point, but I also believe that things happen for a reason. And not being there for my siblings made me realize that I don't ever want to never not be there for them. The opposite. And I think now they're more highly aware that they can count on me for whatever. But obviously, I know that I could be very hard on myself. That's like another thing, like being an older daughter, because of so many things that are expected from you, you're so hard on yourself that you don't give yourself grace, and you don't even give yourself the things for doing the things that you've done, for having progressed in life, for having progressed your mindset. You just get stuck and consumed into this past that you once had because you're just so hard on yourself. And I feel like for me, I'm so hard on myself that the expectations that I have for myself now are way stricter than the expectations that my dad had previously. And with all of that, I also became this person that became a people pleaser. And I wanted to please everyone constantly, 1000%. Like whatever I could do, I would please people. Like I never pleased myself. Whatever someone said, it was what they wanted. If someone didn't like my outfit, I would change my outfit. If someone wanted to basically abuse my trust, they will abuse my trust. They will abuse whatever they could because I always wanted to be pleasing people. Now, obviously, understood certain boundaries, but I feel like in that way, I did let myself go a lot. And it all stemmed down from also being the eldest daughter, having such a military lifestyle, then going into this crazy status mindset, then having siblings and just all of it collectively. There's moments where as an older daughter, you do forget that you exist. You do forget that you do come first, that you should place yourself first, because at the end of everything and at the end of anything, you have to always place yourself first before you can place anyone. If you're not on the top of your pedestal, you cannot uplift any other person with you. Because if you're here, they're lower. That's something that I had to learn the hard way. I used to always be the type of person to say yes to everything. Like I said, being a people pleaser. And once I started saying no, and a lot of things started falling off after I started saying no, I started to realize those are the boundaries that I have to place, because people have to respect me at a certain level. I have to respect myself at a certain level. Reason I also stopped dating, I was not respecting myself whatsoever. I was allowing all of these men do whatever they wanted to do with me, speak to me however they wanted to speak to me. I allowed them to make me feel at my lowest, to drop my self-esteem. I had to go through all of this, to learn all of this collectively, to realize where it came from. And it came from my childhood. I wanted to say all of that because I know a lot of older sisters, they feel, they feel oppressed, I guess you could say, in a way. They feel like they have been failed. They feel like they're not loved or they're not appreciated. And I'm here to say that if you're an older daughter, you're appreciated, you're loved. The expectations from you are higher. And that's something that has been taught within our community, the Hispanic community. But it's also something that has to teach us as later on parents, or if you're a parent now, that when you have an older daughter or son, you can't place all of these responsibilities on them. You can't be as strict on them. You have to let them be. You have to let them have their own mindset, be a kid as well, and obviously if they do something wrong, speak to them, let them know that it's wrong. Also, I believe they should also get grounded but not punished, because I feel, at least for me, the times that I would get punished, and if you know anything about a Hispanic community, when you used to get punished, you wouldn't get punished, oh sweetie, I'm taking the TV, and no, you got smacked. Okay, you got smacked, you got spanked, you got everything. You saw the shoe, the belt, the whatever was close to you, you saw it and you got it. And going into therapy, learning that those are the things that affected me later on in life, the way that I became, the way that I was with my parents, resenting my father, isolating myself from my family, thinking that I had no one, that I was completely by myself. It all stemmed down from my childhood, my upbringing, living structure that I had as being the eldest daughter, and the way that I was raised. When I see my siblings and the way that they were raised, were two completely different worlds. My siblings didn't see the spanking I saw, and if you see both of our lives, they're completely different. Like my siblings during their teenage years, they did not rebel whatsoever. I did. And those were things that I learned during my therapy. That yes, in our Hispanic community, we're taught that smacking or spanking your child is a good thing and it's the proper way to teach them how to be a good person. But then you come to realize and learn that actually makes you rebel as a teenage later on, or as a child later on. That makes the child isolate themselves from you and basically pushes them away. It teaches them that speaking to someone incorrectly or speaking to them in an angry manner and saying whatever you feel at the moment, also like being violent, all of these things, we see it as something that's fine, because those are things that later on I applied into my life. Being violent, but I was not physically violent, I was more verbally violent. When it came down to my relationships with men, I had no sort of respect whatsoever for them. And I have mentioned previously, I've made 2 men cry. And it's men that would never cry. But I made them cry because of the way that I spoke to them. And looking back at it, I spoke to them because I was angry. But that's what I was taught. That when I saw my father angry, that's how he would speak to me. He would be like super mad at me because I was rebelling like a freaking horrible child that I was. And here I am treating a man the same way that basically I was treated just because I was a bad child. They didn't deserve, well, hold on, because they did deserve it in a way. I'm not going to say they did. I'm not going to say they didn't fully deserve it, okay? Because I would always warn these men, don't overcross the line. And I overcrossed my line after I found out that they were cheating on me. Notice or not, it does affect you later on in life. And I remember I promised myself after that, I'm never going to touch my children. I'm never going to smack them. If they do something wrong, obviously there are going to be consequences. I'll probably ground them, like take something away, like I don't know, their iPad, I don't know, whatever, or their toy, just to teach them that that's completely wrong. But I don't want my child to be raised the way that I was, because I also know that my dad did try his best to teach me as much as he could. My dad had not gone through therapy either when he raised me, and he was also very young. It was also his first time around. He had no idea what to do or what to say. So he did do his best. I can say I came out fine. I mean, I had my glitch when I was a teenager, but we're here. With all of that being said, I'm going to wrap this up. I did want to shout out all of my older daughters. I just want to say that you're loved, you're cared for. And yes, sometimes we feel that we're alone, that we don't have anyone, that we can't count on anyone, that we need to do everything ourselves, that we have to be the parent of the home, that we have to be basically take care of everyone and forget about ourselves. But I'm here to remind you and to tell you that put yourself first, and once you place yourself first, everything else will come behind it, because it's almost like a trickle effect. If you're doing good mentally, emotionally, and physically, everyone surrounding you, including your family, will also be good. Because if you're taking care of yourself, they will also look at that and be like, wow, I need to take care of myself. And they will start taking care of themselves as well. So with all of that being said, I just want to say that you're loved, you're cared for. And even though sometimes it gets lonely up here and you think that you're alone, I just want to say that you're not alone. We're in this together. We can do this together. And we're some boss ass bitches. Like, I don't care what anyone says, you know, like at the end of the day, yes, our upbringing was a bit stricter than our siblings, but we're boss ass bitches too. Like, you know, we got this. Like, we're warriors at heart. Like, absolutely no one can mess with us whatsoever, because we're like, what's up, you know? With all of that being said, if you truly loved this episode, I would love for you to subscribe. If you do, I will